Okay, the first thing I would like to go through the action item from the last meeting. Okay, then we copy review the action item of last meeting. Okay. Okay, the first one. James, is James in the meeting? Not, I don't think so. Okay, James is not in the meeting.
Yeah, so I talked to James at KubeCon. I think he was gonna invite us here. We missed the last meeting as LinkedIn, so I'm here again.
Okay, thanks. Okay, sounds good. Yeah. Okay. Okay, the next item. I believe the following three items we can discuss the following three items together. Okay, we have already submitted a joint maintained track session for the KubeCon London 2025. So we're going to submit one joint session for both LCD and LCD operator. So we are not going to submit separate maintained track session for the LCD operator. Instead, we'll submit the joint session. We already submitted yesterday. So it should be done. Okay. Yeah, I already submitted. Okay, the next one probably is just in the meeting. No. So I suppose we are planning to release the LTD 0.1 before the KubeCon London 2025. So we need to implement the basic reconciliation workflow based on the POC. I have a POC a couple months before. So we can do the implement the basic reconciliation workflow based on that POC. Just is supposed to deliver a PR for that, but I don't see NPRs so far. Yeah, we can, Justin is not in the meeting, so we cannot wait for Justin. So anyone interested in to deliver a basic workflow?
Yeah, I would like to at least, if not the complete reconciliation, but I can look at it and start writing something.
Cool, yeah. Yeah, sure.
So the proposal because I'm new here to this group, the
Yeah, sure.
proposal is already documented in that link
Yeah.
that you have mentioned.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Let me 1 second. Let me introduce the. Okay.
Yeah,
So
I'll read into it first, understand it, and then go from there.
You say this one. Create a zero. Okay.
Okay.
That's high level. Then we probably take 5 minutes or probably a couple minutes to introduce because it's important. So I would like to talk about the diagram again. Okay, this is the high level design doc for the 0.1. Probably this diagram is not super clear. You can click this link. You see this link? This link is not clear. You can open this link. Yeah, it's much clear. So I would like to introduce the workflow. Probably use 2 or 3 minutes. So quickly. The high workflow is each time when the operator run into the reconciliation workflow, so each reconciliation will follow exactly the same steps, no matter when it is run into the reconciliation workflow. So the workflow is there are 5 steps. The first step is to let me go back to this one 1 second. So we are going to use the stateful set manage the etcd port. So we have 2 options. The first option just use the stateful set. It's simple. It's super simple. The second option is use the customize port controller, but it's advanced. But in the first step, we are not going to use the advanced solution. We are going to start from stateful set. In the future, if we need some advanced controller on advanced management on the controller. Probably we will switch to the customized controller, but for now, stateful set is good enough. So we will start from 30%. So in short, we will use stateful set to manage the etcd port. For example, if you create a etcd cluster of 3 members, so we will use a stateful set of 3 replica. We will stateful set will create 3 ports automatically. Yeah, this is high-level thought. Okay, let's go back to this diagram. So the reconciliation workflow, just high-level, there are probably 5 steps. The first step is to bootstrap or stateful set. So we always bootstrap with stateful set. If not present, the replica is 0. We just create a stateful set with replica equal to 0. If not present, if the stateful set is already present, then we just skip this step. Okay, this first step. The second step is perform health check. Before we do any operation, we just make sure the etcd cluster is healthy. Otherwise, do nothing. Just to health check. The third step is to exception handling. The reason for this, if previous reconciliation workflow hasn't finished successfully, you will run into some issue, which we should make sure we fix the issue of previous reconciliation before we do this iteration. Yeah, this is high-level thoughts. Reconciliation handling. For example, we should check the stateful set replica is equal to member count. The stateful set have replica. When we scale in, scale out the cluster, we will update the replica, right? To update the replica value. But if the etcd cluster member number should be equal to this replica, right? If they are not equal, which means previous reconciliation hasn't finished yet. So we should make sure the number are equal. Yeah, this is the level, this is the thought.
So if I understand it correctly, like in the first phase, what we have to do is, so obviously the etcd quorum would have been established, and already there are etcd, so basically the instances are already running. So first we create a stateful set with 0 replicas, and then we just the whole intention of this operator is to an already running etcd cluster, we are going to basically include in the stateful set and then manage from there, right?
Yes, yeah.
Got it. So
Yeah,
before we even start this, right, this controller or operator, we already have a running cluster and there is already etcd available. We are just taking on the management from that point onwards when we deploy this operator or controller, right?
The etcd operator, etcd cluster may not exist at all. We may create a new etcd cluster. If we create a new etcd cluster, there's no any port running at all. In that case, we should create a brand new etcd cluster. Okay, anyway, we will cover in the following steps. So, Matt, are you going to say something?
Yeah. So the first replica that ever comes up when you try to create a cluster is, it runs with different arguments than the subsequent replicas that come up, right? So that's something that, how are you planning to, I guess, orchestrate that with stateful set? So at LinkedIn, we have an etcd operator that is in-house and working. Sorry for the background noise. And the way we orchestrate that is we kind of interject a parent process to etcd that handles controlling, I guess, which arguments should etcd run with. And so that determines that, what we do is we look at the stateful set pod's name. For example, if the stateful set pod is -0, which is the first instance ever, and if the cluster is not yet bootstrapped, which is a property actually that we store on the CRD, we start the etcd cluster with like -- initial cluster, whatnot. But then after the cluster is bootstrapped, we go ahead and remove those flags and redeploy the etcd. If you folks are interested in maybe like an alternative reconciliation flow, maybe like we can give a presentation on this topic.
Okay. Okay, yeah, we the goal is for the 0.1, for 0.1.0 version. So we are not going to support two advanced features right now. In the first step, we are going to only the LCD have many parameters or many parameters. In the 0.1 version, we are not going to support customize all the flags. We are going to do that in the future version. So anyway, we're doing this step by step. In 0.1, we only support the user only need to specify how many members in the cluster and what's the version. For example, 3.5.17, something like that. The user only specify two value for the cluster. For all others field, we have to use the default value. In the future, we may support the user can customize all the each field. But for now, we don't support that. So anyway, let's move on. So
Guys, good question.
sorry, can
Yeah, quick question before we move on. It is in our scope for 0.1, right? That let's just say if an etcd cluster already exists, we wish to take that under our control. I think Gaurav mentioned it, but yeah, just want to confirm.
sorry, can I again? Sorry.
So for instance, if an etcd cluster does not exist and post deployment of the operator, I'm asking if it's in 0.1's scope, version 0.1 scope, that post deploying the operator, it should create an etcd cluster. And if it does not exist, it should deploy it as stateful. No, if it does not exist, it will deploy stateful set. And in case it does exist, it will take over that existing etcd cluster.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. If the etcd cluster doesn't exist at all, so when the user create a CR, the customer resource, and etcd operator will automatically create etcd cluster based on the customer resource. So the first step is just create a stateful set with replica equal to 0. And the second step is to, for example, in the beginning, there's no health check because there's no member in the cluster. So the health check will pass. Okay. So there's no any exception handling in the beginning. So in the first step, we will just create, for example, if you are create a 3-member cluster, the first member, you just create a voting member directly. The second, you need to create a lender. When the lender data is synced with the leader, we will promote the lender to the voting. So if you create a cluster of 3 members, you just create, in the first step, create 1-member cluster, and then add the second member into the cluster, and add the third member into the cluster one by one. So it's essentially create 1-member cluster and scale out to a 3-member cluster, something like that. So we will never create a 3-member directly. The reason, why I choose this approach is make sure, when we create a 3-member cluster, 5-member cluster, or create 3-member cluster, scale out to 3-member. So essentially the workflow is the same. So it's make the scale in, scale out process is much easier.
So Benjamin, it makes sense to add the nodes one by one, but I'm trying to figure out, like, when you're trying to bootstrap the cluster for the first time, the first instance that comes up runs with different flags than the second replica that comes up, right? So in one case, you're trying to do -- initial cluster. In the second one, you're trying to use the existing cluster.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. When, for example, when I create a cluster of 3 members, where I use to create the first one and the second one, we have a different member URL, because the state set we assign a unique ID for each pod, right? I just reuse the ID assigned by the stateful set.
So basically, are you suggesting that when the stateful set is first created, it runs with a different pod spec than the subsequent updates? That's the part that I'm trying to understand. Because when you're bootstrapping the cluster, right? Like you can't use the identical pod spec that you used on the first replica on the second replica. So the arguments of the first and second replicas are probably gonna be different, right?
Yeah, in the 0.1, in the 0.1 version, we are only to make sure each etcd pod have different member URL, PR URL. Let me share the link to you. 1 second. Can
So
I see my
you
screen?
said each pod has different something? I didn't get that part.
Can I see my screen?
Yeah.
Can I see the LCD document? Do you see this? Okay,
Yep,
let me
yep.
share it. Okay, 1 second. Let me share your name, give you example. For example, for a class of 3 members, so each member will have different peer URL. For example, the first one will have. Okay, this is not a good example. Let me. So anyway, so for example, the class of 3 members, the first member have peer URL. For example, the LCD1 dot LCD1. The second member have peer URL LCD2, the LCD3. So anyway, we just make sure each member have different peer URL. This is a
Yeah,
key
so
point.
that part makes sense. I mean, you get different peer URLs simply because you're running on different port numbers or different host names. The part that I'm trying to figure out is when you create the first pod ever, there is no any peers, right? It cannot connect any peers. So it has to bootstrap the first, essentially the first pod has to form a cluster first. And then the second pod comes in, and second pod actually has to connect to an existing cluster. So the arguments of the first pod and the second pod are different. The part that I'm asking is, how are you planning to facilitate this with stateful set? In essentially the stateful set, every pod gets identical pod spec, right? So how do you orchestrate?
Okay, got it. Got it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, got it. Yeah. Actually, this diagram is a little complicated. Yeah. Okay, let me explain this way. Let me try to explain more detail. When we create a cluster of 3 members, in the first step, we will create a replica with stateful set with replica equal to 1. Right? So the stateful set will only create 1 pod, right?
I see.
So everything is running well in that case. And then the next step, I will add the second member into the cluster. I will call member add API to add a second member into the cluster. But the second member must be a lender, because if you add one member, the cluster will take down the whole cluster. I will add the second member into the cluster, and after that, I will change the stateful set replica to 2, and then stateful set will automatically create a second pod. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it's gonna create it with the dash initial. So somewhere you have to change the stateful sets, not just replica counts, but you also change the flags of the stateful set, right?
Yeah. Let me 1 second. Let me just let me write down the high level the workflow for you. 1 second. 1 second. Probably. Let me add here. High level. For example. Okay, let me use an example. Okay. The first step is to create a stateful set with replica equal to 0. Okay, this is the first step. Okay, so in that case, stateful set will automatically create a pod. Okay, everything will be running. So the cluster has only 1 pod. So the class has only one member. The second step is to add the second member into the.
So when you
cluster.
create the stateful set
Uh,
with 0 replicas, where does that initial member come from?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. The second member is to here up. Okay. Which means there are okay, that makes sense. Okay, the next step is to add the second member as a lambda into the this cluster by calling member add API. Okay, so so after the third step, the LCD has the LCD class has 3 members, but only one pod, right? Because I haven't updated the replica yet. So the next step is to update the and copy. Okay, next step. So I will do similar step for the third node. So I will not
Oh,
just
One thing that I'll say is that when you start the etcd with single replica, doesn't that member actually add itself? Like, is there a mode in etcd where you can bootstrap a cluster, like single node comes up, but it doesn't add itself as a member?
oh yeah. It's
As
good
far as I
question.
know, it does add itself.
Yeah, it's good question. You know, if for a brand new cluster, you just create one member. You know, for one member cluster, there's no member add operation. Just create a member. Just start instance. Then it will form a one member cluster automatically. Does that answer your question? Hello? So for one member cluster,
Quick
for a
question,
brand new,
Benjamin.
sorry, I go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, quick question. What if they already have an etcd cluster set up and they wish to like if they still install the etcd operator, what about that use case?
And I
The same thing.
also want to add a question on top of this, and I'm sorry if this is a naive question. For the stateful set to exist, right? Like my understanding is like there has to be an etcd cluster already in the Kubernetes cluster for it to persist states, right? So where is that? I'm sorry if I'm not understanding it well, but like where is the initial cluster coming from before this thing? Because for me to create a stateful set, I talk to the Kubernetes API server. And for
I think
Kubernetes
our
API server,
assumption here is that you already have a functional Kubernetes cluster and a worker plane, control plane, and you want to run the Kubernetes, etcd cluster inside the Kubernetes cluster. So
but
the
what happens
etcd
to
is
the
not
existing?
bootstrapping itself necessarily.
But what happens to the existing cluster there? So it basically takes it under its control from that point onwards, right? That was my initial question. Or is it just a separate cluster altogether?
I think we should treat the etcd operator as a separate workload operator, just like a Kafka operator or MySQL operator, something like that. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily have it self-manage itself.
Yes. Yep.
So then what does it like? So if there is already a cluster of, like etcd, and then this operator comes in and maintains another cluster of etcd, what problem is it solving then? Like, I'm sorry if this is like.
So for example, I want to
confusing.
run Kubernetes clusters. Like imagine I'm building my own cloud provider, right? So I need a way to run etcd clusters on demand. Like I want to maybe, I don't know, put pods in an etcd cluster, events in a different etcd cluster. So I want to like basically programmatically manage the lifecycle of etcd. So I want to, be able to come to Kubernetes and say, hey, I would like to declare etcd as a resource, and I would like you to produce me an etcd cluster and let me manage the lifecycle of it. So that's what the operator aims to basically,
Okay, but it's not okay. So it's basically maintaining like an etcd cluster on an existing cluster whose etcd is like
Yeah.
managed separately. Okay.
Yeah.
Understood. Understood.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
mean, we have a
Go ahead.
longer term plan to reuse some of the code for Kubernetes own etcd, but we're not starting there.
Okay.
Benjamin,
Understood.
my earlier point was basically when you bring up the stateful set's first replica, it actually adds itself. I don't think you can prevent the first replica from, preventing. You can't prevent that from adding itself, right?
Sorry, can you say it again? Sorry.
So when you bring the first replica, like the stateful set etcd-0 pod comes up, right? It all when you start that with -- initial cluster, it will automatically add itself as a member. So it's not something that you need to do in the controller, or you can't even prevent it from doing that actually.
Okay, you mean I can default a second step can just one step? You mean can combine the default two step?
I think you can combine them. Yes, you can probably just create the stateful set with one replica. I mean, what I will say is that so based on the reconciliation diagram that you've shown earlier, have we actually run that step by step? Like,
It's a good question. It's a little complicated to explain this question.
no, what I'm asking is like, so yes, there is this like reconciliation loop design, but did we actually try to, forget the controller, forget writing any code? Like, did we actually like try running this from top to bottom like a human, and then observe that a cluster comes up at the end?
Yeah, from finally the steps, the execution step is the same is as I already explained, but the reconciliation workflow is different, because the reason is I need to make sure each time when the additive operator run into the reconciliation workflow, so each iteration run exactly the same steps. So
yeah, I'm familiar
need
with
to-
how reconciliation works. I'm just mostly trying to understand that. So basically, what I'm observing is that as you talk us through the reconciliation model, I'm finding problems in the reconciliation flow. That's what I'm trying to understand is that have we actually run the reconciliation loop like a human? Like basically, did we manually run those commands and actually see that the correct effects are taking place? Like I'm trying to understand if there's any validation.
I believe so. I believe so. Yeah, the reconciliation just if you just manage, you can do manage every step yourself. It just automate all the manual step. This is the value of the additive operator. So actually, this step we can do it manually.
But did we do it already?
Yeah, I already automated this step. But I have a PLC, but the PLC there are a lot of to-do items in the source code.
Okay. So I guess back to my question. So when the first member comes up, because in the reconciliation flow, you mentioned that the controller calls the member add, right? But in reality, in etcd, when you register the first member, it registers itself. And actually, every subsequent member, if I recall correctly, also registers themselves.
No, not yet. Not yet. So for the additive operator, only the first member. When you start additive instance, then there is one member cluster automatically. You don't need to add the member itself. But starting from the second member, you need to add member. Yeah, this is the only difference.
I see. And so basically between the first member and the second member, you're probably gonna change the command line flags, right? Because the first member that ever gets created starts with -- initial cluster. But you can't start the second. I guess Anthony has a question.
Yeah. For the first member, the class the member have the flag is the status is new. For the second member, the status is existing, the different flag.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, I had a question. When you're adding this second member, so you're calling member add before you update the replica count. So because if the pod's not created, you don't know necessarily the IP for like the client URL. So are you adding like an empty member, and then will that second member auto update itself? Like, because I think you'd have to make a separate member update call for that.
Yeah, that's the reason why we use the stateful set. Stateful set will make sure the second member, the network ID is unique, will not change. Right? When we
Right, but how do you know the IP before you create the?
No, we don't use the IP. We use the DNS, the main name. We don't depend on the IP.
Right, but at some point you're gonna like the member will have to have a client URL, right? So what's updating that?
The same thing. The client can use the client can use the DNS to connect to the active server.
Oh, you're using DNS. I see. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I think from this step, I think this step is pretty clear. But from this workflow, probably is a little complicated to understand the steps. But I'm happy to explain the details offline. But anyway, the high level thought is simple. We just when we create whatever, for example, 3-member cluster or 5-member cluster, the workflow is create 1-member cluster in the first step, and then scale out the 1-member cluster to 5-member cluster or 3-member cluster. The high level workflow is something like this. So essentially, if we support create a 3-member cluster or 5-member cluster, then we should already support scale in or scale out the cluster. So scale in, scale out should be very simple to support. Yeah, this is the hello. Let's go back to the POC. Yeah, yes. Yeah, I did the POC 7 months ago before the KubeCon Paris. Yeah, this is the source code. Yeah, the most important function is this one. Yeah, so I'm not going to go through the details. So the high level thought is to let me copy this. So the action item is implement the reconciliation workflow based on this. Let me add. Okay. So if you have any questions, so feel free to ping me in the Kubernetes Slack channel.
Yeah, I'll do that because probably I may have more questions.
Yeah,
I'm still trying to understand the flow completely. It may take me a couple of iterations to go through to fully understand and then implement the logic. Are you like before I, like fully commit to this action item, is there like a deadline that you are expecting it to so that I don't want to overcommit something that I can't, deliver
that's
on
fine.
time. So
Yeah, we would like to have some demo to have something to demo in each meeting. This is you don't have to finish everything, just something. No matter how much the progress, I need to see some demo in each meeting. Otherwise, this is easy. For a long time, there's not any progress. So I want to see some demo next meeting.
Although likely next meeting will be January, right? Because our normally scheduled meeting would be the day after Christmas, I think, which is unlikely to happen.
I think I can tag team with Gaurav on this.
yeah. So Abdul, do I reach out to you over Slack?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, yeah, let's connect probably sometime next week. This week I have a busy schedule. I'll start working on this from next week. I'll reach out, have a connect, let's understand, and then probably divide the tasks and then go from there.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yeah, and we have a Slack channel. Do you know that we have Slack channel for the working group? Can we send it into? Can we send
Yeah,
it into-
I haven't connected with this group yet over Slack, but I'll do that probably next week, Monday, and then
Okay,
reach
okay,
out to
got it.
Abdur. Thanks, Abdur.
Okay, so
Thanks, Rich.
actually I have a small video to demo how the POC work. I made a small video on this demo work. Probably I can share the video in the work group Slack channel after this meeting. Just 3 minutes of video, 3 minutes demo for how this work. Okay, I will share the video in the Slack channel. So I see a question for the Amit. Could we get a presentation slot perhaps for the next meeting to present what we have built internally? So probably I'm not sure what's the so I'm not sure for how much progress we can make next meeting.
Yeah, so I mean, mainly because we're directly diving into implementing reconciliation. My intent is to present what we have built internally. So at LinkedIn, we have an etcd operator. We use it in production already. It already manages some of our clusters.
really? Okay.
And we learned quite a few things while implementing that along the way. We learned things around, how to handle pod evictions and like disruptions to
Really?
pods. Yes, and we also have a rather sophisticated way of bringing up the cluster and then adding subsequent members. We also do some of the common things that you have in your proposal, such as the learner model. So I think maybe like if folks find that useful, I would like to at least like bring some sort of diagram. We could show the code. We could do a demo as well of a working example, and we can maybe like if there's any inspiration to be taken here, I thought it would be beneficial to share that.
Is your operator is open source?
Unfortunately, it is not. I mean, we're not really like, we can open source it, but it has so much internal coupling that it will be pointless. I mean, one of the main reasons why we're participating in this working group is to basically not maintain an internal one and just build an open source one and just use that open source one.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sounds good. So is your operator is used in the production environment and
Yeah.
okay, cool. So yeah, how much time do you need to demo for the presentation?
I mean, I guess it is up to like how many questions people will have and stuff like that, but I'm fairly sure we can do a pretty easy demo in 10-15 minutes. If we, dig into the code, whatnot, it will be probably much longer, but probably not too long.
Okay, sure. So we have 1 hour each meeting. Probably we can give you 30 minutes for the next week. Then probably next we have bi-weekly meeting. So next time you can demo your internal as operator. Yeah, great. Thank you. Okay, let me add action item.
And again, re-asking that question. So the deadline for this or like expectation for these action items is that before our next meeting, which is happening in
Oh,
January.
no, not yet. The point is I would like to see we have some progress. We have something to demo in each meeting. So I'm not saying we're going to have to finish it in that meeting, because we're going to build the Christmas is fast approaching. So we're going to do it before the Christmas. So personally, I would like to see we can, next meeting probably in the Christmas. So most likely we'll cancel the next meeting. So next meeting maybe after Christmas. So however, I would like to we can get the just convert the PLC into the as operator. The PLC is there's a lot of to-do item in the source code. So when you convert the source code, the PLC into the operator, there's still a lot of things to do. So we can just in the first step to convert the what we already have into the operator. And after that, we can discuss all the details, all the to-do item in the source code later.
Sure. So
Probably
I'll
1 month. 1.5 months, something like that.
Sure, I'll tag team with Abdur and like, we'll do whatever we can before our next meeting. And then we can go from there. And Ahmed anyways has volunteered to do code review. So thank you, Ahmed.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, please, anyway, please feel free to reach out in the Slack channel. I'm all happy to jump in your call to discuss the detail plan.
Sure.
Yeah, we already have discussed enough. Anything else you want to discuss? George, Hackman, Segment, do you have anything to discuss?
No, I think we're good.
I'm good also.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining us in the next meeting. See you. Bye.
Thank you.